Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, of course, when it comes down to it, I thought, of course, that I would review some of the channels that, of course, that I regularly review in terms of either exposing narratives or certain other things. But, of course, let me give a certain shout out overall to certain channels that usually I end up criticizing, with that being AKHi TV and some of these other channels, because of course they ended up getting their fight prediction correct, whereas I ended up getting my fight prediction wrong. And of course, as I always state on my channel, although I do get the majority of my fight predictions correct, of course, not every single time do I get my fight prediction correct. And let me give Terrence Bud Crawford, overall a lot of credit as well, because this is now the second time that he has proven me incorrect. And I don't believe that either man was necessarily at the absolute best point in their career, but that's why I also state that in my personal view, although I did state that Canelo, in my view, probably had the slight more wear and tear heading into this fight, just because of the level of competition that he had fought. And on top of that, because he had fought more professional years, it's not like Crawford was necessarily a spring chicken either. He was someone, of course, that overall was moving up a couple of weight classes. He had never fought here before. We had no idea how he was going to adjust to the weight. And then on top of that, he's damn near 38 years old. So this fight, in my view, was very comparable to Sugar Ray Leonard versus that of a Marvin Hagler, where I remember a certain amount of people, they'll claim that Sugar Ray Leonard did not fight Marvin Hagler necessarily when Hagler was at his best or when he wasn't quite the same anymore. Well, Sugar Ray Leonard was also a little bit more aged, I believe, at that point in time as well. And this fight is very, very similar. So, just in my personal view, there really is no major valid excuse as to why Canelo Alvarez lost this fight, other than he just lost to the better fighter. Because both fighters, in my personal view, were at a very similar point in their career. And once again, I'm not someone overall that gets highly emotional. I'm not someone that's, overall is a fanboy of any of these particular fighters. And I stated what this fight overall meant for both of their legacies. What it meant for Crawford is that if he ends up winning this fight, that he'll be compared at the very least with guys like a Sugar Ray Leonard, or like that with a Roberto Duran, even guys like a Floyd Mayweather. And the fact that he's also undefeated, and the fact that he was able to beat Canelo Alvarez overall once again, moving up a couple of weight classes, and he also has never lost a fight in his career. He may never have the resumes of certain guys like a Duran or a Sugar Ray Leonard or certain other guys like that, but he's going to be put on that same level at the very least, if not above them. And people are always going to be talking about Terrence Bud Crawford, about how no one would pretty much beat him on his peak level. And you could definitely debate that, because Terrence Bud Crawford is someone that not only is undefeated, he's the first man ever to become completely undisputed in 3 separate weight classes. And to be honest with you, there's only one other man that I think even has a possible chance of doing that. And of course, that's Naoya Inoue. But I'm not even sure if Inoue is going to be able to do it, because I'm not quite sure if Inoue is as all-around good as a Terrence Bud Crawford, of course, although I don't think they're levels apart. But Inoue is someone that, overall, he has been knocked down in his past couple of fights, and we'll see, how he handles 126, because I do believe he is going to be massively outsized in that weight class comparative to some guys, especially that one, big Mexican fighter. I'll have to see. But anyways, shout out to Mr. AKHi TV, and shout out to some of these guys. That being stated, just in my personal view, do I believe that they're always the best boxing analysts or the best boxing predictors? No, personally, I don't. But, it is what it is. That's just my personal view. But congratulations once again on getting their fight prediction correct, and I was wrong. And once again, I'm not someone overall that has a problem with eating crow whatsoever. I ended up getting my fight prediction wrong, and let me give a great congratulations to anyone that got this fight prediction right and who proved me wrong. And on top of that, overall, to Terrence Bud Crawford, who also proved me wrong. But that being stated, the reason why I also wanted to review this video is because AKHi TV also brought up some very interesting points. And what I will personally state is this. We do have to be consistent overall with certain standards, and I claim that if Terrence Bud Crawford was going to win this fight, because I held Canelo in very high esteem, that in my view that Crawford would have to be debated at the very least within the top 10 levels of all time. But my point also was this. For a certain amount of the people overall that were claiming that Canelo Alvarez was super overrated, or for the points overall that people were claiming that Canelo is the most overrated fighter of all time or one-dimensional, that's your perspective, that's your view. I've never personally seen that, and I think that even Canelo tonight proved that he can still fight somewhat within a multitude of ways, just not as good as a Terrence Bud Crawford. But that being stated, AKHi TV is going to reveal some things that he's always truly thought about Canelo Alvarez now that he knows that Canelo Alvarez is never going to be debated as the best of his era. And he's going to debate that Canelo Alvarez is now debatably the greatest Mexican fighter of all time, which is what I've been telling you people all along, which is what guys like AKHi TV and a lot of these guys state, because they don't mind, overall if Terrence Bud Crawford is remembered as the best of their era. And now that they know that Terrence Bud Crawford is probably going to be remembered as the clear best of his era, which in my view he clearly deserves to be, but all of a sudden they're going to pull the guard down and they're going to show what they truly believe about Canelo Alvarez all along. But anyways, let's get into it. Let's see what AKHi TV has to say. Let me also state this, and I know that a lot of people would disagree with me. I don't see a world where that fight was 107 to 102. I thought that the commentary was extremely biased towards that of a Terrence Bud Crawford. I thought that, overall that maybe they were in a little bit of shock of how great that Terrence Bud Crawford was actually doing. I thought that Terrence Bud Crawford had won the fight, but I don't think that it was anywhere near as far apart as what the commentary crew was trying to say. I thought that Canelo Alvarez actually was winning the first half of the fight, but in the second half of the fight, he was starting to peter out a little bit more, and Crawford was then starting to take over a decent amount more. And the first half of the fight was close enough to where you could have scored it 3-3, or something like that. But like they had Terrence Bud Crawford winning, all for the, first of the 4 rounds. Like, I'm sorry, I just don't see that. The first round, I thought maybe you could have given to Crawford. The third round, definitely. But the second round, I definitely thought went to Canelo Alvarez. And the fourth round, I also thought clearly went to Canelo Alvarez. But anyways, let's continue.
I hate to tell you, I told you so, but I told all of y'all so. I had a guest. His name is Goku. He pulled up. He sensed that we had a Super Saiyan on Earth. His name is Crawford. And he confirmed tonight that he's a Super Saiyan because he went Super Saiyan one more time on Canelo ass. I predicted that Crawford was going to win by unanimous decision, and he will hurt Canelo Alvarez multiple times during the fight. And
I do believe that Terrence Bud Crawford actually hurt Canelo Alvarez multiple times throughout the fight, which wasn't really as surprising when I seen how tired Canelo was in the second part of the fight. But, I was wondering how tired Canelo Alvarez was really going to be. I thought that Canelo was going to be able to get within the range a little bit more. I thought that he was going to be able to walk him down a little bit more. But, Crawford's lead hand, obviously just very much bothered Canelo Alvarez. And Canelo needed to get past that lead hand. He needed to try to get within the range a little bit more, and he just wasn't able to. It just is what it is. He needed to try to do that. But Canelo Alvarez, and I've already stated this, Canelo at times is someone that, tries to box a little bit more than sometimes what he probably should. Now, he will mix it up a little bit more than, when he needs to. But when it comes to the level of a Terrence Bud Crawford, then, of course, it's a little bit different. Now, AKHi TV is going to bring up something once again about Canelo debatably being the greatest Mexican fighter of all time. We'll talk about that, and in my personal view, if Canelo is there or not, we'll discuss that. But anyway.
That's exactly what he did. So congratulations to Terrence Super Saiyan Crawford for becoming a 3 times undisputed champion.
First man overall to ever do that. Now, he's not the first man to ever overall become 3 times undisputed, but he is the first man to become 3 times undisputed in 3 separate weight classes, which is something that you really got to give the man a lot of credit for. That's something overall that is GOAT level status in my personal view. And the fact that he was able to beat an all-time great like a Canelo Alvarez, that's something overall that is very, very special.
A legendary fighter like Canelo Alvarez, who is arguably the greatest Mexican fighter of all time.
Well, this is where I kind of have to call you out a little bit, Mr. AKHi TV. I don't mind overall us giving the praise of a Terrence Bud Crawford. I don't mind overall people stating that he's now the best of his era. I don't mind overall people claiming that he's debatably up there with any fighter, including Floyd Mayweather, Ali, Sugar Ray Robinson. I don't mind any of all that talk, or that he's the clear best of his era. I have no problem with that now that it's proven. But the point overall is that you, Dante, and a lot of these other guys, you were claiming about how overrated Canelo Alvarez was for the longest time. You were claiming overall about how Canelo Alvarez has lost every big fight in his career. You were claiming all this stuff about how Canelo was getting a lot of robberies. My point overall is this. I don't mind overall people going on this trend of saying that Terrence Bud Crawford, that he's clearly the best of his era now that he beat Canelo, or that he's up there with any fighter ever because of this victory and what he's been able to do. I have no problem with that. But we all know that AKHi TV was putting these narratives about that overall that Canelo Alvarez is the most overrated fighter of all time. Well, then how can Terrence Bud Crawford be on that level overall if you truly believe that Canelo is the most overrated fighter of all time? Once again, and I've already stated this, it's very obvious that AKHi TV, nor Dante, nor any of these other channels that talk this shit on Canelo Alvarez truly believe that. Because if you think that Crawford beats Canelo Alvarez and that this victory overall puts him immediately into GOAT status, if Crawford was, or excuse me, if Canelo was someone like that of a John Ryder or something like that, we would not be having that conversation. The reason why Crawford is put now on that level is because Canelo also is an all-time great level fighter. Now, that being stated, can he ever be debated on certain levels like a Sugar Ray Leonard or guys like that, of a Duran or certain guys like that ever again? Because now after this loss, no, he can't. Because Duran, overall, and Sugar Ray Leonard, say whatever you want to about them, but I never ended up seeing them lose to two smaller guys in their career overall that they possibly could have beat. So I mean, it just is what it is. So Canelo, in my view, is going to have to be on that same level as guys like Oscar De La Hoya, as Miguel Cotto, Sugar Shane Mosley, Juan Manuel Marquez, Marco Antonio Barrera, and Eric Morales. He's going to have to be on that same level. Is he the greatest Mexican fighter of all time? I mean, that's kind of up for people to decide, but at the end of the day, this is definitely going to hurt his argument to be over certain fighters like that of a Chavez or certain other guys.
Just that, Crawford moved up multiple weight classes, obviously. He was going up against all odds, and he completely dominated Canelo. I mean, you have to give credit where credit is due. The way Crawford looked tonight, the way he made adjustments.
Once again, I thought Crawford won the fight, but come on, he didn't win like the first 5 rounds. Like, Jesus Christ. I'm not claiming overall that he didn't win some of those rounds, but like all the first 5, like, give me a break.
The way he showed separation, that's GOAT level. I really can't describe how Crawford was dominating Canelo and showing separation during the fight, other than saying he went Super Saiyan on Canelo ass. For real. That's how impressive Crawford looked. The reason why I say that, when you see Terrence Crawford in the ring with Canelo was much bigger.
No, he really wasn't. And this is also where I got to call AKHi TV out. No, Canelo Alvarez was not much bigger. Now, that being stated, I'm also not going to put the narrative out there that Terrence Bud Crawford was bigger than Canelo or that he was the exact same size. But it was obvious that Crawford, that he packed the weight on pretty well. And on top of that, Crawford is someone overall that is more comparable in size to a Canelo Alvarez than what most people let on. It's no offense, but that's why they look comparable in size overall in terms of the ring. But that being stated, Crawford still is a guy that is around a natural 147 pounder, maybe 154 at most, but he's someone that is around those weights. Canelo is probably someone that's more of a 160 pounder, but he's someone that was adjusted to the 168 pound weight class. So we got to give Crawford a lot of credit here. He moved up simultaneous weight classes, just like Duran did, just like Mosley did, just like Leonard did, and he was able to be successful.
More massive. He has way more mass. His punches, clearly you can see that it will take a toll on Crawford if he takes too many of them. First of all, Crawford showed that he can take Canelo Alvarez's punch.
He was able to take Canelo Alvarez's punch, but the thing is that I don't think that Canelo Alvarez ever landed flush enough in the fight that it was ever a serious problem for Crawford. Canelo Alvarez, in order for him to win this fight, he was going to have to land consistently against Crawford and hope that he could keep Crawford up against the ropes or at least land certain shots. And I thought that, Canelo possibly maybe wasn't going to be able to do that consistently throughout the fight once Crawford was kind of having him back up a little bit in the early part of the fight. I think that Canelo was a little bit perplexed by his lead hand and his reach, and I think that he was a little bit surprised, to be quite honest with you, at Crawford's size. And I think that he thought that Crawford was not going to pack on the weight quite as well, but he did. So we got to give him a lot of credit for that. And the year layoff appeared to help out, even more because it adjusted his body size, overall to the better degree.
He showed that he has an iron chin. He also showed...
Well, I'm not gonna go that far because the point overall is once again is that Terrence Bud Crawford. I don't think that he ever got hit flush enough within this fight overall by Canelo Alvarez in order for me to say, wow, like he was taking super flush shots. That being stated, what Crawford did show is that he was able to take Canelo Alvarez's power and shots enough, and then on top of that, be elusive enough in order to win the fight. So that's what I'll give him a lot of credit for.
That he hurt Canelo more than Canelo hurt him.
I would actually agree with that. I do think that Crawford hurt Canelo Alvarez more than vice versa, which is actually a little bit of a surprising factor. That was not something that, I was really expecting a little bit more. I mean, Crawford did go to the body of a Canelo Alvarez, and that was a little bit of a factor. But, I think that to be quite honest with you, that Terrence Bud Crawford, I mean, he hurt Canelo to the body a little bit, I think. But, Canelo just had such a problem with getting around that lead hand. Like, he really wasn't able to get around that lead hand to a great degree in the first round whatsoever from onward. He was able to get around it to a degree. He still was able to land certain shots. Like, he landed some good left hooks, he landed some good right hands, and some good body shots, but it just wasn't consistent enough.
From the first to the last round. I mean, the way the last round ended after he caught him with that check hook, I don't know if it's a check, jab, check hook, a hybrid punch, you can say. He hurt Canelo with that punch. Canelo wobbled, and Crawford didn't seize the moment. However, he realized Canelo seemed hurt, and he turned up. I know Canelo Alvarez is glad he heard the final bell during that moment because Crawford could have even, took him out. I don't know if Canelo was gassed out. I don't know if Canelo was hurt.
I think that Canelo Alvarez was a little bit more tired in this fight overall than probably what he expected to be. I expected Canelo Alvarez to be able to pace himself a little bit better because I thought that Canelo Alvarez wasn't going to have to move around as much as what he did within this fight. But Canelo Alvarez, once again, and I stated in my fight prediction that although I do think that Canelo probably will be a little bit too big for a Crawford, the fact that Crawford is smaller in size compared to some of the other opponents that Canelo has been used to facing for a while, it may actually be, kind of a disadvantage for him in this fight comparative to some of his other fights. And in no way am I claiming that it's an excuse for, that of a Canelo Alvarez. But when you fight that a bigger opponents or opponents overall that outweigh you, that may be slower than what you're usually used to, and then you're fighting a faster target that you're not usually used to, it's kind of similar to that of a Marvin Hagler. Like, you can tell that he was used to fighting guys that were a little bit slower, a little bit more hittable. Then he got in the ring with a Sugar Ray Leonard, and I think that he was a little bit surprised overall at his level of speed and overall his level of movement. And I think that it was the same thing with the Canelo. I think that Canelo thought that maybe he'd be able to get inside the range a little bit more, and I think that he tried his best, but there just really wasn't anything Canelo could do.
The way he was looking. So that was highly impressive for Crawford to move up all these weight classes to his 6th weight class to beat Canelo Alvarez at his best, the most experienced.
I believe actually it was his 5th weight class, but I understand what AKHi TV is trying to say.
Canelo we ever seen. According to Canelo trainer Eddie Reynoso, this was the best version of Canelo, physically and mentally. And they said they were going to knock out Crawford.
Well, let me also state this. Because AKHi TV overall heading into this fight, it was very obvious that he also had his excuses prepared just in case Canelo Alvarez were to possibly win this fight. He was stating that Canelo had, every advantage possible, that he had the judges, that he had the ref, he had this, he had that, he had the commentary, that, his trainer stated that he was at his absolute peak in terms of condition, and Canelo looked in great condition, but I've already stated this, and this is no excuse for either side, but neither fighter is at their absolute peak anymore. But the reason why, in my personal view, it's not a valid enough excuse to excuse Canelo losing is because Crawford also is not at the peak of his career anymore. So this is a fight to where we have to give Crawford a lot of credit because neither fighter overall is at the absolute peak of their career anymore. They're both pretty much, I'm not going to say, I think, of course, it would be premature to claim that they were done, of course, but they're definitely on their last legs. They're nowhere near what they used to be. And certain people in my comment section, of course, stated that, well, I thought that Canelo looked faded. I mean, he definitely, of course, didn't look as quick as what he used to be, but I thought that Canelo looked good enough in the fight condition-wise and, all that other stuff in my personal view. I thought that he looked good enough to where if Canelo would have put on a little bit of a better performance, that he could have won the fight, but he just was not able to. And the reason why he was not able to is because he met a fighter that was better and more skilled and smarter than him. Period.
Well, that didn't happen tonight. Crawford showed his class. Crawford showed that his name belongs in the same sentence as Floyd Mayweather, as Sugar Ray Leonard, as Sugar Ray Robinson, as Roy Jones, as Sweet Pea Whitaker. These are...
I agree with that. But the only way Terrence Bud Crawford makes it into that realm, Mr. AKHi TV, is if you're admitting that Canelo Alvarez is debatably the greatest Mexican fighter of all time. I agree with you. But the point overall is like I've been telling people for years, AKHi TV never believed in a lot of the shit that he ever said about Canelo Alvarez in the first place. Like, once again, this is why when you hear all this shit talk on these guys claiming that Canelo Alvarez was overrated and all this other stuff, all of a sudden, they're going to start talking a lot more positively about Canelo Alvarez because they know how great it's going to make Terrence Bud Crawford look. And I agree, Canelo is an all-time great level fighter, which is why Crawford, especially moving up a multitude of weight classes, deserves so much credit. But this is why, once again, I wanted to review this video, because AKHi TV was one of these guys for years that would talk all this shit about how Canelo Alvarez is overrated and he's this and he's that. And then this fight ended up happening, which is really the fight that they wanted. So just in case Crawford were able to beat him, which of course he did, they could claim that Crawford overall is the greatest of all time. But my point overall is, or my question is to AKHi TV, you were claiming that Canelo was massively overrated and that there's no way that he's the greatest Mexican fighter of all time. So how come now that Crawford has beaten Canelo Alvarez, he's debatably the greatest Mexican fighter of all time?
The top 5 greatest fighters of all time, you can say, right? Well, put Crawford on that list.
I agree, but then what that means, AKHi TV, is that Canelo Alvarez was really better than what you were trying to state all along. It's very obvious that AKHi TV and a lot of these LDBC and new media channels, they were very insecure about the fact that there might be a fighter like that of an Alexander Usyk or a Canelo Alvarez that may have been remembered as the best of their era. And now that that more than likely is not going to happen, they can be a lot more gracious to certain fighters overall like that.
He is top 5 of all time. They tried to, obviously bury his shine. Old media tried for the longest, ever since Floyd Mayweather and Andre Ward retired, to bury Crawford stardom. Remember the time where...
No, they didn't try to bury Terrence Bud Crawford's stardom. Terrence Bud Crawford is an all-time great level fighter. But at the end of the day, when Vasyl Lomachenko and certain guys like Canelo Alvarez were ranked #1 pound for pound, they did deserve those spots, at least for a little bit of time. It just is what it is. These guys can, they just overall are not accepting of that, but it just is what it is. You cannot have the biggest win of your career be Victor Postal, be a two-way division champion, and Lomachenko is beating guys like Nicholas Walters and Guillermo Regendao and Gary Russell Jr. and Terrence Bud Crawford is just over him. It just wouldn't make any sense. So, I mean, it is what it is.
Teddy Atlas told Crawford and Andre Ward to their face after Crawford became undisputed at 140 for the first time since 13 years. Nobody did it. Ward just knocked out Kovalev, who old media was saying is #1, #2. And Teddy Atlas had the audacity to tell Crawford and Andre Ward, y'all not pound for pound #1. Y'all behind Lomachenko, who got 1 loss to Salido and didn't even avenge that. How disrespectful.
Well, what I'll personally state is this, and I do agree that, but I mean, Teddy Atlas is someone overall to me that, he's kind of a colorful commentator, but he's not always someone that can leave his biasness out of it. It's very clear that he has an agenda against certain fighters and that he also loves certain fighters as well, and he will defend those fighters tooth and nail. Vasyl Lomachenko is one of those fighters. It just is what it is. But that being stated overall, let me also address this. When Lomachenko ended up losing to Orlando Salido, Salido was a champion at that given moment in time, and that was Lomachenko's second professional fight. I understand that certain people will say that, oh, well, he had all these fights in the amateurs and blah, blah, blah. Right, but the amateurs are not the same as the pros. Overall, the amateurs are 3-round boxing fights. The professionals, especially in a championship level fight, especially in the second fight of your career against an experienced level champion that, to be quite honest with you, pulled a lot of dirty shit, in that fight, with a whole bunch of low blows and other things. But the point overall is that Lomachenko, when we talk about it, because of course the LDBC and new media, they're going to use this win that Crawford now has to spread a lot of the bullshit, overall that they need to. What the truth actually is of the matter is that Lomachenko was a guy that was not at his absolute peak yet, and he did later on try to fight Orlando Salido, but Salido believed that he was not receiving enough money, and there was no way that he was going to receive more money than Vasyl Lomachenko in a rematch. It was basically his way of knowing that he got that one great win over Lomachenko, and he was not going to get it again. Because Lomachenko overall, by 5 or 6 fights in, he was more than enough experience, and he was more than likely going to knock Salido out in the rematch. It just is what it is. And Lomachenko ended up knocking out Roman Martinez, a guy overall that was knocked out by him within 5 rounds in dominant fashion. And Salido overall was someone that ended up losing to him or having a very competitive fight, just a fight before then. So Salido knew that Lomachenko more than likely was a very bright and shining star, that his career was always going to be remembered by winning over Lomachenko, and he could be the one to state, see, I beat Lomachenko and he never beat me. That's pretty much the truth of that matter. It is what it is.
How disrespectful. It went from Roman Gonzalez, Gennady Golovkin, Kovalev, Lomachenko, Canelo Alvarez, and now it's Inui and Usyk. But nah.
Right, but Usyk is someone that still debatably deserves to be there. Now, right now after this win, I would debate Crawford there, of course, because this is something that is phenomenal, and he's a 3-weight division champ, or excuse me, a 5-weight division champion, and he's someone that is now undisputed in 3 separate weight classes. I understand, but AKHi TV, of course, is going to try to overall use this once again to spread a lot of his political bullshit. No. At the end of the day, Crawford is a great fighter, but the reason why he was not put at the #1 pound-for-pound spot for a while is because his resume was not looked at as extensive. It just is what it is. People can like that, they can not like that, but it's whatever. But the point is that all that pretty much is null and void right now, because Crawford got that humongous victory over Canelo. And although his resume may never quite be on the same level as some of those guys, like a Leonard or a Roy Jones or some of those guys, his resume is going to be oftentimes forgiven now because he got that phenomenal win. So this is big for Crawford.
Tonight, Crawford went Super Saiyan again and showed the separation between a great fighter, an elite fighter, and an all-time great. And that's a fact. Everyone saw Crawford go Super Saiyan. So we know we got a Saiyan on Earth. That being said, in the opening bell, Crawford was filling Canelo out. He was obviously studying him. He haven't boxed in a year. Canelo had all the advantages. But I told you guys, Crawford is the best at making adjustments. He was adapting, and he didn't let Canelo Alvarez breathe. The only mistake Crawford...
I do agree with that, Terrence, but Crawford, overall pretty much was setting Canelo off balance the whole fight. Canelo just really needed to get in there. He was just, way too patient, in my personal view, within this fight. And I stated that he was really going to have to try to rough Crawford up within this fight. If he's a little bit too patient, then he has a possibility of losing this fight. And he was.
He made in the first round. He didn't utilize the jab as much. And Bomac told him right away. And then I felt that Crawford was countering too much to the head when Canelo was throwing to the body. I felt like he should have countered more to the body from the jump. Well, he didn't do it.
Well, Canelo Alvarez is someone that, for whatever reason, people always think that it's super easy to go to Canelo's body, but it's really not. And Crawford overall still did, miss overall, quite a few punches compared to his usual standards, because Canelo just has excellent upper body movement. But Crawford's speed and his reach and his all-around skill set, it was just too much for Canelo.
As the fight went on, Crawford won the first 4 rounds. Canelo couldn't do anything.
I don't personally agree with that. Now, I think that Crawford won the fight, but I definitely don't think that he won the first 4. I don't think that Crawford won the second at all, and I also don't think that he won the fourth at all.
But you can sense the danger in the fight, because you can tell if Crawford only makes one mistake, and then Canelo every now and then will slip a very, nice body shot. And you start wondering, how will Crawford be able to handle that as the fight goes on? Will that slow him down? Well, it surely didn't.
Well, Crawford didn't really slow down in the fight because Canelo was not able to get to him consistently. I knew that overall Crawford was going to be able to handle the shots if Canelo was only going to land here and there. But Canelo was going to have to land consistently, just like he did over Jermell Charlo. And if he was not able to land as consistently within that fight, or even nowhere near close, which he was not able to, Crawford was going to be able to take a lot more of his shots because he's going to be able to take the shots on his elbows or on his arms here and there, but he can't take it consistently throughout the fight. The problem was, and Crawford was breathing a little bit heavier towards the end of the fight because he was someone that you could tell that, he was adjusted to the weight a bit more, but he had never been there before. And he was wearing down a little bit, but nowhere near to the same degree as a Canelo.
After the fourth round, the fifth round, Canelo came on strong. Then the sixth round, that's when Crawford went up another level. He started whooping Canelo. I think he turned Super Saiyan 1, okay? I think he probably went from base form to Super Saiyan 1. Then, as the fight went on, Crawford started countering to the body because he's listening to his trainers and he's, touching, keeping Canelo busy upstairs and touching Canelo to the...
One of the shots overall that Crawford definitely was effective of, and possibly the most effective shot in the fight, was that lead hand jab to Canelo Alvarez's body. That stabbing jab, which is also a punch that Canelo oftentimes enforces as well. That punch was debatably the most effective against Canelo in the fight. So that, possibly could have won Crawford the fight.
Body with counters, and that slew Canelo down tremendously because Crawford was in front of his face. He was not moving. What y'all talking about running? Who was running? Canelo was moving as much as Crawford was moving.
He definitely was, and Canelo Alvarez was not going to win the fight doing that. That being stated, of course, obviously, I do think that Crawford was moving a little bit more than Canelo. But obviously, Canelo, he was not going to win this fight overall by moving, overall as much as what he did throughout the fight. He needed overall to stand his ground a little bit more within this fight. He needed to try and pressure Crawford and get inside the range. And Canelo Alvarez overall, he needed to possibly try to risk to get hit in the early part of the fight to land some punches, and he just wasn't able to do it enough.
On the back foot. And as the fight went on, Crawford went Super Saiyan 2, Super Saiyan 3, and this dude started going Super Saiyan 4, even Ultra Instinct on Canelo ass. And obviously dominated him. They tried to take the fight away from him. The way the fight was, obviously, the way the judges scored the fight, even...
I actually don't think the judges had it wrong. I thought that the judges had it very accurate. I thought that the commentary team was awful. Like, literally, overall, they were glazing Terrence Bud Crawford to such a massive degree. And don't get it twisted, I think that Crawford won the fight as well, but, come on. He's up 5 rounds to 0. Are you serious? Come on.
The commentators and the unofficial had Crawford dominating the fight.
Yes, and they were terrible. There's no offense. I thought that Crawford won the fight as well, but come on, bro. You have him up 5 rounds to 0, especially in the second and the fourth round. Come on, man.
Canelo only won in 2 rounds, right? And, Crawford won unanimous decision by 115, 113, and 116, 112. That's crazy. That's criminal.
No, it's not really criminal. Actually, it was the proper way to score the fight. But those commentators, they were awful.
But we all know Floyd also had a draw on one of the scorecards when he fought.
Of course, Canelo Alvarez has been known at times to receive favoritism by the judges, of course. But this was one of those fights, in my personal view, to where it was scored correctly.
Canelo, and so did Bivol. If Crawford didn't dominate Canelo, he could have got robbed. And that's why I said he has to dominate, which I knew exactly he will be able to, because when I first saw Crawford for the first time I think his name was Prescott that knocked out Amir Khan.
Breidis Prescott, yes. Breidis Prescott was someone that, of course, for those of you that don't remember, I believe that he was a Colombian fighter. And, of course, he was undefeated when he met Amir Khan. Amir Khan, of course, ended up being knocked out in round 1, I believe, by an upset. Prescott, of course, then on, never quite lived up to his hype ever again. He lost a lot of fights and kind of became a journeyman. But that being stated, Crawford clearly was smaller in that fight. And he, I believe, moved up to 140 for that fight when he was at 135. And that he was on short notice for that fight. And Crawford completely embarrassed him.
Told you guys then, he's going to be pound for pound #1. And he surpassed my expectations because he's not just pound for pound #1 or been #1 since Floyd and Ward retired. He's an all-time great. Something like Kobe, something like...
Well, Terrence Bud Crawford always has been an all-time great. So has Canelo Alvarez. But this puts him on a whole different level.
LeBron, something like Jordan. Who knows? I mean, only Allah knows who's the best in the ring. But one thing for sure, Crawford is one of the 5. Top.
He's probably one of the top 10. I'm not quite sure if he'd be officially in my top five or not. But it's not like it's not debatable. I mean, the man overall just got the biggest win of his career, so it is what it is. You could definitely debate him as top five. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. If you have him there, that's certainly your prerogative. I think that it's highly debatable. I would probably say that Floyd Mayweather, in my view, would be over a Terrence Bud Crawford, just in my view. But other than that, who else is really above him, at least for sure?
Five of all
The
time.
man overall is now undisputed in 3 separate weight classes. There's never been another person to ever do that. He moved up multiple weight classes. He's clearly the most skilled of his era after this fight. Phenomenal fighter.
So put some respect on his name. All that hate, give the king his crown.
Right, but AKHi TV, this is where I gotta call you out. You've given Canelo Alvarez overall the most amount of hate possibly out of any other channel that I've seen. It is what it is. So once again, you also need to give Canelo Alvarez his credit as well if you want to put Terrence Bud Crawford on the quote unquote GOAT level. It just is what it is. You can't be talking about, out both sides of your mouth claiming that Canelo's the most overrated of all time, blah blah blah. And then now all of a sudden, now that the result that you wanted to happen did happen, and now all of a sudden Canelo Alvarez is a great fighter. Like, you can't have it both ways.
When you think about Floyd, when you think about Sugar Ray, you think about Crawford.
I agree.
And that's a fact. Canelo, yeah, we agree with y'all. He's an all-time great, the greatest Mexican fighter of all time. And Crawford on his...
Well, actually, Mr. AKHi TV, you didn't agree with many people. You've only started saying that now because overall, once again, Terrence Bud Crawford ended up getting the result that you wanted. So at the end of the day, overall, once again, AKHi TV shows his regular double standards and his politics. It just is what it is. Anyway, people can say whatever they want to about me and my channel, but what I've always stated is that both Canelo and Crawford, in my personal view, that they're both all-time great level fighters. And I've been stating overall that if Crawford wins, that these are the standards that I will give to him, and that if Canelo wins, that these are the standards that I will give to him. And if either fighter loses, that these are also the standards that I will give to them. And I upheld my standards. But the thing is about AKHi TV and some of these other guys, you've been claiming forever that Canelo is not something special. Now all of a sudden that the result ends up happening. All of a sudden Canelo is something more special, overall than what you always alleged. What does that really say about AKHi TV? What it says overall is that he always knew that Canelo was a special fighter and someone that was up there, but he knew that he was a threat. And that's why overall, once again, their motivations from these channels, that's why overall they will never overall claim certain guys like Usyk or Canelo or Inoue, even if they're, just as accomplished as certain fighters in history, they're never going to give them the same amount of credit. So, it is what it is. Anyway.
Worst day, on his oldest day, moved up to his 6-weight class.
No, Terrence Bud Crawford was not on his worst day. Let's please cut the shit. Canelo Alvarez was not at his absolute peak here. Of course, neither was Terrence Bud Crawford. But let's stop this horse shit about Terrence Bud Crawford being on his worst day and blah, 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 all sort of bullshit. He came in very good condition. He handled the weight very, very well. All right, it is what it is.
Divisions pretty much...
Now, am I claiming that Crawford was at his absolute peak? No, I am not. But let's stop overall the politics, okay? I know that AKHi TV never is. He's a politician. So, it is what it is. But anyway.
Time when y'all said he has the best chin in the world. How's Crawford gonna slow him down? Yeah, by going Super Saiyan like Goku does. So, congratulations to Crawford, man. I don't even know what to say. I'm speechless because I was highly impressed with the way...
Right, but why are you speechless if you always thought that Canelo was super overrated and if Crawford was hands down going to win this fight? It's very obvious that AKHi TV, that he knew that Crawford was in it, for possibly the hardest fight of his life. Like I said, I've always stated this. I can tell overall when someone's bullshitting people overall with what they're stating. It just is what it is. And AKHi TV, it's no offense against him. I give him credit overall for getting this fight prediction right, but he's a bullshitter. It is what it is. Anyways.
He was throwing so many combinations at Canelo, and Canelo being a counterpuncher wasn't even able to return it. And at times, he will make Canelo run.
Canelo Alvarez being a counterpuncher is interesting. I thought Canelo Alvarez was this one-dimensional pressure fighter that couldn't find any other area. Once again, this goes to show you what AKHi TV always thought about Canelo in the first place. He just knew that Canelo, if he never had fought Crawford, that he was always going to be a possible threat as the best fighter of his era. But now that that can never be debated ever again, he shows you once again what he truly thinks. Anyways.
To a shot. Anytime Canelo landed, Crawford will return. That's why they couldn't be biased tonight. They couldn't be biased tonight because it was a domination. It was the masterclass.
Well, I actually thought the commentary was extremely biased. Once again, I thought the right man won, so at least that's good. But I'm sorry, but this fight was not 9 rounds to 3.
It was someone going Super Saiyan. With that being said, congratulations to Crawford for officially becoming a GOAT, top 5 of all time. Subscribe below and to be continued on the next episode.
Congratulations to Mr. Terrence Bud Crawford. Definitely would be debated as a top 5 fighter of all time. He might even make my top 5 of all time. He certainly is in my top 10 of all time right now. But top 5 of all time, I don't know. I'd have to really do that. I'm not really someone that has a confirmed top 10 list anyways. But one thing's for sure, Canelo can no longer be within the debatable top 10 of all time. He just can't be. He lost to both Floyd Mayweather and Crawford, 2 fighters that, overall were about, clearly smaller than him, at least either moving up in weight. So he has to be on that same level as De La Hoya and some of those other guys. Guys that were debated as the number 1 pound for pound for a time, but can never be remembered as the best of their generation. But let me give AKHi TV credit. He got his fight prediction correct. I ended up getting mine wrong. Now, of course, did AKHi TV keep the same standards? No, obviously not. But I mean, it is what it is. But anyways, that being stated, overall, congrats to Crawford, all-time great level fighter. Canelo's an all-time great level fighter as well. He's just not Crawford. It is what it is. But anyways, that being stated, overall, congrats to Mr. Terrence Bud Crawford for putting on a great performance and doing enough to win the fight. And overall becoming the first man to become undisputed in 3 separate weight classes. That's possibly something that may never be done again. So that's something that's really special. But anyways, that being stated, thank you all so much for watching. I'll talk to you all later, and we'll see where this goes.